How many people would you say are living roughly around the Potts Point area, and how many of those are children?
Very few children.
Yeah.
The numbers vary. I think in the peak, in summer, you could possibly get 1,000 people.
Really?
In winter, and it's more likely to be around the 400, 500 maybe. There are other factors, varying factors in that, and it's hard to give simple answers about why that changes. What we have to bear in mind is that the vast bulk of homeless people are only homeless for a short time.
Mm.
There's a PhD in this for somebody. If I was younger, I'd go and do it.
So you don't think that there's not a lot of long-term homeless people?
Hardcores? No.
No?
No, I don't believe so. I think there's a couple of hundred hardcore people for whom you could give them $1 million and they'd still be homeless the next day. There's a couple of hundred of those.
Okay.
And that's largely mental illness. For most of those, Wayside is almost like a next of kin. You know, they go to the hospital and we get named as next of kin, and we go up and visit and do everything that a next of kin would do. When they get arrested, they give Wayside Chapel as their place of address. We don't have any accommodation, but the cop shop up here's got summonses this high for people who give Wayside Chapel as their address. So that's the hardcore, but that hardcore is smallish.
And when you say that people are only homeless for a short period of time, do you have situations where people are on and off? You know, they drop in and out of homelessness, or?
Yep. The theory is, and I don't know this is true, and this is why I say there's a PhD in it for somebody, because nobody really knows. People tend to be on the street for 3-4 nights, and then you won't see them again, or you'll see them again in about a year, and they're homeless again for a short time. Some people say that there's a whole moving population of people who wear out relatives and, you know, wear out all their friends, until eventually there's no option and they're on the street again.
Right. And
then they go and do the circle again. There's a certain amount of interstate movement of homeless people, but look, I think that theory is probably as good as any that I've heard, but nobody really knows, and it would be quite an interesting project to work out where people come from and where they go to.
In general, is homelessness in Australia on the increase? What are the contributing factors? And obviously it's something you've already talked about, mental illness, but what role does parental abuse and mental illness play?
Is it on the increase? The answer is yes. I don't believe it's dramatic as most of the media tend to suggest that it is.
Mm.
The best we can measure things, we're getting about 100 additional presentations per month at the moment, but percentage-wise, that's not a big figure.
Yeah.
So it's not particularly remarkable. Because what we were saying earlier about us being at the bottom of the heap, I think by the time our numbers go up high, if they are to do that, the rest of the whole culture is going to be in a lot of trouble. So I would say the numbers are not remarkable at this stage. I would think the pain is more to be found lately in the suburbs and in the garages and in the extra bedrooms and that sort of thing is where I think the pain is.
I mean, this may be not completely correct, but I guess, from my perspective, a lot of homeless people in the Wolloomooloo, Potts Point area suffer from either a drug or alcohol dependency. From your experience, what comes first? Is it the dependency that spirals out of control and you become homeless, or is the dependency a way of dealing with homelessness?
It's a good question. It's a chicken and egg question.
Yes, very much so, yeah.
What I would say is that homelessness, addiction and mental illness is almost always three sides of the same thing. Almost always. But I would say if mental illness finds you on the street, it won't be long before you have an addiction. And if it's addiction that puts you on the street, it won't be long before you have a mental illness.
Yeah.
And that's a fact.
Yeah.
And you can watch that. You can see people go downhill, and you don't need a long time. You know, a couple of months you can see somebody lose their mind quite effectively. And there is no doubt in my mind that there is a direct correlation between housing, or the lack of, and not just mental illness but other health problems. So skin problems, you know, teeth, especially teeth, but other health problems. There is a direct kind of inverse relationship between the level of housing and all those medical problems.
Yeah. Australians like to believe that we are an egalitarian society. When we'll donate trucks loads of cash to bushfire victims, tsunami victims, but there seems to be a high degree of apathy in the community when it comes to homelessness. Yeah, why is that? And do people in the community perceive that these people are homeless or deserve to be homeless because they haven't worked hard enough?
Yeah, look, I guess that pops up from time to time. People, generally speaking, who have money, lots of it, look at people who have less of it and say, well, I worked for my money. It's a complete nonsense. But it's really hard to get a good news story to penetrate the public consciousness. What they see is, you know, what's this lowlife asking me for $1 for on the corner? There was something in the TV just recently where they interviewed a guy on the street who was begging, and they said, you know, how much do you get? And he said, I get about $50,000 a year. Now, if you know anything about people who live on the street, numbers mean nothing. Nothing.
Yeah.
The chances that he was making $50,000 a year begging are zero. There is no chance in the wide world. He plucked a number out of the air, but everybody believed it.
Yeah.
You can get $50,000 a year just by sitting on the corner and saying, can I have $1? Well, you know, the truth is people who beg are almost always short of cigarettes, and what they're asking you for is money for cigarettes. That's really what it is. And they have to work fairly hard to get enough money to buy a packet of cigarettes. If you try it, don't take my word for it. Go out there and tell me how long it takes you to get enough to buy a packet of cigarettes. And my guess is you probably won't want to do it tomorrow. But you know, life's pretty tough. If you're in a boarding house around here, you pay $280, $300 a week. Yep. And your pension, if you're an invalid pensioner, if you're mentally ill, will be $300 to $320 maybe a week. So you've got $20 a week to live on. And you're probably in a boarding house that has 15, 20 beds. You're all paying $300 a week. You share the bathroom, share the toilets, share the laundry. And you've got $20 a week. Well, you tell me how you eat for 7 days. Now, the truth is there's a lot of free food that's around, and once you know the system, you can grow fat on free food. That's a fact. You can. But you can't you can't smoke. You know, $20 won't buy you too many smokes. So people beg. And the connection between schizophrenia, for example, and smoking is something like 95%. There's a phenomenal dependence on cigarettes. And it's expensive. And that's why people go around picking up butts and then taking the tobacco out of the butts and then turning that into rollies. And, you know, it's all about cigarettes. And most begging is about cigarettes.